All right, I'm gonna start this out. You guys get to be my audience. Yeah, that's right. And hello to everybody watching on the live stream. Getting ready. Yes. Oh my goodness! All you guys, calm down, calm down. So, all right, we're getting ready to do this session called EfficienTEACH. So, if you're watching this on the live stream, thank you for joining. We're at the FETC conference here in New Orleans, and we're at the Samsung booth here, getting ready to do this presentation, EfficienTEACH, called Teach Better and Save Time for What Matters Most. It's something that I've been posting on my website for a while. You can go to EfficienTEACH.com and see a whole bunch of resources related to it. But in this session, I get to kind of like give you some of the best stuff, some of my best tips related to that idea of teaching better and saving time for what matters most. So we're going to be continuing to, hey, how's it going? Sarah's back. All right. So we're going to continue. I'm going to continue doing these presentations here in the Samsung booth, working on their interactive display. You're going to get to see better seat, right? You're going to get to see lots of the features related to that and some of the things that you can do with it, which is pretty cool. We'll have that all kind of embedded in and everything. So without further ado, we're going to start diving into this a little bit. See if this quote resonates with you a little bit. It says, wow, I'm all caught up. What will I do with my prep period? Said no teacher ever. Which is pretty accurate, right? Like we all are pretty much just like swamped, like packed to the gills with stuff to do during class, stuff to do during our prep period, things to grade, things to plan, emails to respond to, and it's like there's just not enough time in the day to do everything, you know? And I don't know if you all have noticed, or if you all have noticed, that over the last few years, we've been losing really good teachers. You know, teachers that are fantastic teachers that just feel so overburdened and overconsumed with what they've got to do as teachers. And so they just end up leaving the profession. And the more that I would look at it, I would think, and see, this is kind of how we feel, right? Like beating our heads on the wall, like, how am I going to do this? How do I solve this puzzle? And the more that I've looked into, you know, some teaching practices, brain science, you know, some research, some of these productivity things, like there's all of these little solutions that I find that so many teachers don't know about that can help us to do what that subtitle said earlier, which is teach better and save time for what matters most. Like I feel like if we can use some of these things, and you usually teach until 5 o'clock, if you can get out the door at 4, that's a big difference, right? Sarah, is that a big difference? Right? Yeah. Right. It's like it adds up, you know? And so if we're able to get through what we need to do, but we don't have to sacrifice our teaching. We don't have to do like lesser teaching. That would be pretty great. That's kind of like the focus of this whole presentation. That's what we want to do. Can we save time for what matters most and still teach well? So over the last year and a half or so, I've kind of been trying to create a whole bunch of resources around this very idea. Research-based, pedagogy-informed type of stuff that you can do to save time but also teach really, really well. And so we've been throwing all of those resources onto sort of like a sub-page of my Ditch That Textbook website, which you can get to at EfficienTEACH.com. And it's full of a whole bunch of stuff that you can check out. I started out with this actually by kind of like crowdsourcing it to teachers on my email list. And I said, if we want to do this, if we want to save time but still teach well, what are your best suggestions? And I put up a Google Doc, and you can see on the screen here, like, I got tons and tons of responses from people of the things that work for them, you know? And so I've been kind of like gathering some of those and coming up with my own ideas to try to help you all do that. And so this presentation is a compilation of 10 of my favorite things out of that whole collection, which, like it says there, you can find at EfficienTEACH.com. So let's just dive right into them. I mean, we got 10 of them to cover. We're gonna have to get going. So we'll start with the first one, and that is this: to use free digital content and lessons. It's already out there waiting for you to use it, but the trick is finding it. See, there are lots of really good companies that serve educators that have created some really good resources. You know, companies, organizations, you know, they put this stuff out there, and sometimes we just don't know that it exists. And so sometimes our lessons are almost like created for us, where we can take that lesson and kind of remix it and adjust it a little bit and make it into what we need. It's just sitting there. We just got to know where it is. So if that stuff is out there and it can save us some time by being, you know, like our first draft of our lesson plans, maybe we go check it out. These are some of my favorite places. And if you go to this link, ditch.link/content, I've got a list of 20 of these. It says 20 plus sources of free digital content for your class. So some of them have complete lesson plans. Some of them have, you know, like articles and summaries that your students can see. They've got videos. There's, you know, PDF files, all sorts of content that you can use to find some of that stuff so that, you know, you don't have to make all of it yourself. These are a couple of my favorites. I love PBS Learning Media because they've got lots of interactives. You know, you can have students watch videos, we can have them read articles, but if there's stuff where you can like click and drag it, or you can like manipulate and move things around on this interactive media, it's pretty cool. And by the way, since I mentioned that, a lot of those interactives work really well on a display like the Samsung Interactive Display because it's got this web browser built into it. And it interacts with a lot of those websites and apps that we like to use in the classroom, only you can touch it. So if you have something like that that's interactive and clickable and draggable, students can come up to the board, or you can demo it on the board, and you just do it with touch. And of course, it's gorgeous and beautiful and colorful and all of that stuff. Google Arts and Culture is like that too. They've got those, you know, 360-degree videos and images that you can manipulate, again, with touch on a display kind of like this, and on and on and on. I've actually got a whole session that I'm going to do at 3 o'clock Central Time, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, if you're watching. That's about TeachFlix, which is a site of a whole bunch of videos that we've collected from teachers that they use in the classroom, like crowdsourced videos from teachers and activities that you can use with them. It's this website that you can kind of navigate similar to the way that you can navigate Netflix, but it's just for teachers. So you can find that at teachflix.org. So you can find some of that free digital content that's out there. That can save you some time, right? So that's one of them right there. Let's keep moving. Let's go on to number 2, which is to use pre-created questions for review and practice. Because we're probably all familiar with like Kahoot, right? Quizzes, Quizlet Live. It's like there's some of those sites that we can use for review and repetition and practice. The thing is that if you start to search for a Kahoot game, a lot of times you don't find exactly what you're looking for. You might find something that a student made that has mistakes in it, or if the teachers made it, it's like not exactly what you want. The thing that people don't realize, though, sometimes is that you can make a copy of somebody else's game on almost all of these platforms, and you can adjust the questions. So if I find a Kahoot game that's like 75% what I'm really looking for, I just bring it up and duplicate it. Like it says here, copy and edit, and you can do that in Kahoot and Quizlet and lots of other ones. You copy it, and then you edit your copy and change out those questions that you don't like. So then that way, you don't have to make a brand new Kahoot game, a brand new Quizlet game. The other thing that's kind of cool is if you're familiar with Quizzes, which is another one of those quizzing tools, they have this feature called Teleport, which I love. And the idea behind that is you put in a keyword. Let's say you need to get some questions that have to do with ribosomes. You type the word ribosomes in there, and it starts to show you all of these Quizzes games that have questions related to ribosomes. You click on it, and it shows you all of the questions inside of those Quizzes games, and you can pluck questions out of everybody's Quizzes games and make a whole new quiz. That's the reaction I was looking for. You can, so if you find, you know, like 6 or 7 different Quizzes games, you go, I'll take a question from this one, I'll take a question from this one, I stick them into my game, and you're done. Again, don't make the whole thing from scratch, right? Just use what's already out there. So that's number 2. That has to do with those review and practice activities that we do. Number 3 is to clone yourself. And I'm not talking about like cloning, like I'm going to clone a sheep, now I'm going to clone a teacher, but you explain it once and then put it someplace where students can access it. This is like, if you feel like you're explaining the same stuff to your students over and over and over again, here's the idea. You take that explanation and you record it. And the thing that I love about this is that you can actually record it while you're explaining it to a student at some point. So say a student comes up to your desk and says, hey, and they go, hey, Mr. Miller, I really need you to help me, conjugate verbs in the preterite in Spanish. I was a Spanish teacher. So I'm like, okay, let's do this, but first let me grab my phone. And so I'm gonna pull up one of those recording tools like Loom or Screencastify or Microsoft Flip or whatever. I'm gonna take one of those recording tools and start a recording. I'll sit down next to that student and say, okay, let me explain this to you. And I explain it in my best way possible. And then when I'm done, I stop recording. I put it on a website or I put it in my learning management system. And then if a student is like, hey, I need some help with this, they can go record, yes, they can go access that recording. And it's not like you're being impersonal about it because it's still the best version of yourself. It's your best explanation of it. But now you're more accessible to the students because they can access you from home. They can access you on the bus. They can access you in class if they don't want to come over and ask you in class, So start to build up some of these videos, and when you got a whole library of them, students might go check those instead of coming and asking you. Saves everybody time. Let's keep moving. Number 4 is to create a solution center. Companies do it to save time and empower customers, so let's do it for students too. Have you ever been to a frequently asked questions page on a company? What they do is they gather questions that their customers generally ask, and then they stick them someplace where they can all go and you can go and see the responses to all of those common questions. And I've thought for the longest time, why don't we do this as teachers, right? You can do it just as simply as pulling up a document. This case, this is like a website, like a Google site. And so you pull it up. There's this says, what's your policy on late work? That can be like procedural stuff, but it can also be questions about content too. And so we put that best version of our answer right there into that document or onto that website. It's like a frequently asked questions. So, or a Google Doc if we want to make it real simple, or a Microsoft Word document with those frequently asked questions and the helpful videos, the cloning videos we were just talking about. And so if students ask another good question, or parents ask a good question, let's just stick the answer on there. And then the first line of defense for kids is, let's go look at the frequently asked questions. Let's keep moving. Let's go to number 5, which is to do brain dumps in class. So, and it says retrieval practice locks new content into long-term memory. So if you've been following Ditch That Textbook for very long, I bet if you're watching this at home, there's probably a couple of you that have heard me talk about retrieval practice on the blog or in the emails or something like that. And so this is one of those great things that locks things into students' long-term memory. And so retrieval practice activities are things that'll keep you from having to reteach things over and over and over again. It's like if you've ever gotten done teaching one day and the students leave and they come back the next day and they sit down and you feel like the learning is just leaked out of their ears overnight somehow. This is the thing, right? Exactly. So this is the kind of thing that really locks that into place. And sometimes it's just simple prompts like, what are 2 things you remember from class yesterday? It means they have to dig into their brain and recall that stuff and pull it out. It's this teeny tiny little prompt that you give, but that's what brain science tells us makes lasting long-term memory. It almost feels like it's too easy to be true, it's like it's cheating, but it works. That's the thing. So you can do these digitally with a tool like Socrative or Microsoft Flip. With Socrative, and this is perfect for using on an interactive display. You pull up the browser, you put Socrative up there, and it asks a little short answer question. The students pull that up on their device and they type their responses to it, and it displays all of those answers up on the screen. So if they're doing that recall here, what's neat is that I, as the teacher, get to see what kids remember. But then if I look at that list, I also get to see what they didn't write, and that's the stuff I probably need to go back over. So, and like it says here, simply ask students to recall what they remember about specific topics. And the key here, like it says there, is ungraded. As soon as we assign a grade to it, it's an assignment. The brain processes it a little bit differently. This is a study skill. This is a study strategy and not an assessment. That's the big thing. So anyway, doing brain dumps in class like that is a good thing. One thing that I want to show you real quick that you can do with this display is, like, if I find something, like if I really liked that idea right there, what I can do is I can use the browser and I can hit capture, and it takes a picture of whatever was in that browser. I've got slides up here right now, but you could do it with a YouTube video, you could do it with a website or whatever. And then I can take that image, make it the size that I want, see how it's kind of like a rectangle there, and then I hit merge, and it sticks it on my whiteboard. Oh, but wait a second. It's got those little like black bars next to it. Like, that's not very pretty. You need to get rid of that. Okay. Well, let's just erase it with our hand. There you go. See, it's like an image. It's just like the drawing, right? I mean, so we can kind of like use it in that same way, which is pretty cool. So we just bring this back over and maximize it again, and we're back to the races. So that's one thing that I love about these displays. That's super cool. Let's go to number 6. How are we doing on time? Oh, this is perfect. I'm halfway through my time and I'm halfway through my numbers. Like, this is good. This is good. Okay. Number 6. This is another thing that's like brain-based, good brain-based learning. We talked about the brain dumps and the retrieval practice in number 5. Now we're looking at number 6, which is encourage students to reflect, because it helps them think about new content and how they learn in new ways. This is like after we've done something, after we've done some learning, after we've done some sort of activity, we ask students to stop and think back about how it went. And this is something that we ought to package probably at the end of our lessons in a variety of ways. We can have them reflect on content. So it's like, now that we've talked about this, now that you've learned about this, what do you think about it? Is there anything that doesn't make sense? Is there anything that challenges your existing thinking? How would you feel if you put yourself in those people's shoes? You know, like, those are content area reflections. But you can also do learner reflections too. What did you think about your work? Was there anything about it that you struggled with? Could you do the process better next time? How did you manage your time? You know, those kinds of things. And really, just asking students those questions and having them reflect on it, the value isn't in what they turn into you. Value is them having done it. And these are the kinds of reflection questions that you can ask. And if you're watching this at home and you can't see this, well, you might be trying to take a screenshot. I might be standing in your way. I don't know. But the slides for this are at ditch.link/FETC23. So if you go to ditch.link/FETC23, you can make a copy of all of this. And by golly, if we see this slide and we're like, hey, this could be helpful, like, I'm going to grab this and put it on my, I'm going to put this on my board again. So we'll just like size that and merge it, get rid of the little, oh, it's not going for some reason. I'll erase it later. We'll maximize that again and back at it. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, that's right. I've got some templates that can help you with this. Here's a quote that I really like related to this idea of reflection. It's attributed to John Dewey. Some people come at me sometimes when I say that John Dewey said this, and they're like, I'm not sure John Dewey said this. Okay, John Dewey didn't say this. Somebody did, and I like it. So I would give attribution to whoever actually said it. He said, we don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience, right? And if you don't give students that opportunity to lock it in and think about how it fits in their world, sometimes it just slips out of their brain. It's one of those little things. That's what EfficienTEACH is all about, right? It's like one of those little things that you can plug into class that takes like 30 seconds that helps lock learning into students' brains for the long term, you know? So I've got a post called 10 end of year templates to help students thrive. If you just do a Google search for that with Ditch That Textbook, like, you should be able to find that pretty easily if you want to get some of those templates to help you do this. Number 7 is to triage your feedback. Don't overwhelm students with too much feedback. Give them just what they need. Triaging your feedback. So I learned about that word triage from hospitals, because hospitals use that term triage. If a catastrophe happens and a whole bunch of patients come in and they can't treat everybody all at once, they don't take them first come, first serve, because, you know, if somebody has like a serious condition, they need to treat them first, right? That's what triaging is all about. It's looking at all of the things that you have in front of you and deciding what's most important, and then focusing on that first and then getting to the next things. If you're a student, you've probably gotten something back from your teacher that has feedback on it, and it looks like there's a bunch of red ink. And it's almost like it's dripping white. It's almost like it's bleeding, you know? And when you get that, you're not going to process all of that feedback. It's just too much. It's either overwhelming or it makes you feel like a failure. And if you want to avoid that with kids, an easy way to do that is to triage your feedback, which first of all means only give them feedback on the most important things. Knowing that if you try to fix every single little error, you're not going to get to all of it, or they're not going to get to all of it. It's going to be extra work for you that they'll never really look at. But the triage idea is this. As you're grading student work and you start to see that there's common problems through all of them, let's say you got 25 students and you're grading these papers and you see on 22 of those 25 it's the same problem. Instead of writing feedback over and over and over and over again about that, here's what you do. You get up in front of class the next day and you say, okay, lots of you had issues with this one thing. Let's talk about this as a class. So instead of taking your time writing it 22 times, let's address it with the entire class. It's triaging. It's realizing this is a big problem. We're going to take care of this with everybody instead of writing it all of those times. Saving you time on grading, getting you home faster, right? Okay. And when it comes to triaging feedback, I've got this whole post called How Do I Give Feedback to 100+ Students? It's like a big question that we were trying to come up with answers to. You know, like if you have lots and lots of students, how do you provide meaningful feedback to them? And so this idea of triaging feedback is just one of them. If you like this idea and you want to dig deeper into it, again, search on, just do a web search for how do I give feedback to 100+ students and ditch that textbook. You should be able to find it pretty easily. 3 more. We're going to gallop through these like we're on a horse, right? We're going to like gallop through. Number 8 is to allow for exploration. Let students find things on their own because it gives them agency and voice. I started to see a lot of this in remote teaching during the pandemic, because sometimes teachers were like, I don't know what kind of device the kids are going to use. I don't know, you know, there's like a lot of variables about their home. And so they'd say, go search for a topic X, Y, and Z that's related to the content, and then do something with that. And that started to give kids choice. And all of a sudden it was like, oh man, why haven't I been doing this the whole time, you know? One thing that I really liked for doing that, there's this thing called a choice, well, there are choice boards, you know, like you give students a list of activities and they can kind of pick from them. There's a different version of it too called the Explore board. This is an idea that my friend Holly Clark, who's another, you know, writer and speaker in education, she talks about these, where if you have a topic that students are learning about, you give them a handful of resources related to that topic, but they're not required reading. You give them like 10 different videos and articles and stuff, and you say, go read a few of these that are interesting to you. And then everybody kind of goes off and reads something different. And it gives them some choice, but it's also still tied into the content, which is pretty cool. And of course, when you do that, it gives students the ability to go explore it on their own, which means you don't have to set it up yourself, saving you time so we can get you out the door faster at the end of school. Oh, it says Google search Holly Clark Explore boards if you want more information on that. 2 more. We're getting close. How are we doing on time? 5 more minutes. This is perfect. Okay. So number 9, allow for productive struggle. Y'all heard that term productive struggle before? Okay, productive struggle is the idea that if students don't get something easily the first time, it's not a bad thing. It can actually lead to deeper learning. Let me give you an example. Video games. How many times, have you ever watched kids play video games before? You ever watch yourself play video games? Like, how often will a kid, when they get a brand new video game, go look for the instruction manual and read the whole thing all the way through? No, they just want to have a go at it, right? And so what do? They go in and they try it out and they fail colossally at the very first try. So then what do? They play it again. It's like they want to just try to figure it out, and they're going to struggle and work their way through it as they figure it out. Then they walk into the classroom and we go, let me give you a 30-minute lecture about all of these things that you need to know, and then just regurgitate it on a worksheet. There's no productive struggle in that. There's no like figuring it out on your own. As teachers, we want to be fixers, right? We want to like come up with the solutions. We want to give students what they need, but sometimes the best thing we can give them is the ability to struggle. I love this quote from Barbara Blackburn. She published this in an article on ASCD. Productive struggle is what I call the sweet spot in between scaffolding and support. Rather than immediately helping students at the first sign of trouble, which we like to do because we're fixers, you know, we should allow them to work through struggles independently before we offer assistance. That one is so good that we're going to capture it and we're going to put it into our notes. Actually, I'm going to put this into the notes right here. We're going to merge the image, and then see, I have the ability now. See if I can get this thing out of my way. We have the ability now to use the pen, and we can annotate. So we said the sweet spot between scaffolding, see now I can write on top of it, and support. There's that ugly little black bar at the top that we're going to erase. Yeah, so you kind of get the idea. Once I get that, browser out of the way, I'll be able to mark it up a little bit more. Last one, we're almost there. Number 10, which is to let students teach and provide feedback. We considered this one before, like students as teachers. It says the teacher isn't the only one who's allowed to do this, right? It can save you time and help students. So if teachers kind of become the, students kind of become the teachers, that puts them in the perspective of being the teacher. It helps them kind of see the learning process from the other direction. But then if they're giving feedback too, you know, if we as teachers are the only ones who are providing students feedback on what works, what's right, what they could do differently, it's exhausting for us. And the students can do some of this too, right? So there's some strategies we can use to do that. I love this SPARK acronym that you can use. This comes from Mark Gardner, who's a national board certified teacher in Washington. And he published this, and I thought this was great. This SPARK sort of like framework that you can use to have students do peer feedback, that they should leave each other specific feedback. It should be prescriptive, which means that it offers a solution. It should be actionable, which means they should know what steps to take afterwards. It should be referenced back to the criteria and the goals for the lesson, like the lesson objectives. And I like this last one. It should be kind, right? I mean, that's just obvious, right? I feel like that one should be obvious. You know, framed in a kind, supportive way. And so when students learn how to do that, it takes some of the burden off of the teachers, but it also empowers the kids too, you know? Oh, one more thing. So if you're here in the house, or if you're watching this on the live stream, I've been showing you some of the cool things that the Samsung interactive display will do, right? So if this is interesting to you and you want to get a really good deal on this board, I have some good news for you. The fine folks at Samsung have given me a coupon code you can use to get one of these in your own school if you want to. So if you want to do that, all you've got to do is go to ditch.link/display. That'll take you to the purchase page. And then on checkout, you use the code DITCH15, and you can get 15% off of that display. So if you take that back to your IT staff or your principal or your superintendent or whatever, and you're like, hey, this thing's pretty cool. You can even show them this video if you want to. And I want to see if we can get some of these. Having 15% off is pretty good. The offer's good through February 7th, 2023. So if you want to go check it out check it out before then, you can get a really good deal on one of these. There's some terms and conditions that you can see in the slides that you can find at ditch.link/FETC23. So check those out if you need to. But if one of these things looks good to you, go check it out. There's all of them, all in one place. That slide also is available at that same spot where you can find the where you can find all the resources. Again, at ditch.link/FETC23. But those are some of the things that hopefully will help you teach better and save time for what matters most. So hopefully that was helpful to y'all. Feel free to check out any of the resources that we've got here, and if you got any questions, feel free to ask any of these fine folks. Sarah, just coming back to you. That's right. But if you've been watching at home, I hope you've enjoyed this. I got another session coming up at the top of the hour if you're watching it live, or if you're watching it on the video replay, you can go back and rewatch any of these. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. And again, go check out that deal on these Samsung displays because it's pretty good. So, okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you.